Welcome to episode 11 of Travelling Science. G'day legends, welcome back to Travelling Science, the podcast that's sharing science with the world. My name's Jesse Crow and I'm the Travelling Scientist, coming to you today from Vancouver in Canada. I'm a health science communicator, and on this podcast we interview researchers, doctors and experts, hearing their stories and sharing their ideas that can help you to live a smarter, happier and healthier life. This week's guest is a professor of mathematics and a cybersecurity expert, Professor Asha Rao, and she's here today to teach us how to be smarter and safer online. Asha is also passionate about getting more people involved in STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics, and she especially encourages more females to get involved in those fields. Professor Rao's not only a role model in the world of STEM, but she's also lovely to talk to. She has so many little bits of life advice and cute little stories, and by the end of our discussion, I just kind of wish that she was my mum, you know? Sorry, Mum. During our conversation, she answers questions like why you need to change your passwords, what's the difference between spam and a scam, why you shouldn't post photos of children online, what to do if the Prince of Nigeria emails you, and are our smart devices spying on us? And we also discuss topics like malware, phishing scams, cookies, IoT, people watching, sharenting, and the remarkability of our brains. But before that, I'd just like to quickly share a review of the podcast with you. And this week's review comes from Wild Espororio 1749, who said, "Bro, I love the triple effect that you're having. Positive health education, positive charity donations, and creating a positive community." Well, bro, thank you for the review. I always appreciate getting positive feedback like that. It makes my day. And if you're listening now and you like what I do, or you want to make me smile, you can leave a review as well on Apple Podcasts. That would be incredible. I truly appreciate it. And I could be reading it out on next week's episode. But for now, let's get into this week's interview and learn all about cybersecurity with the one, the only, Professor Asha Rao. Professor Asha Rao, welcome to Travelling Science.
Thank you, Jesse. Lovely to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure having you. Thanks for taking the time. I'd just like to start by asking you, what exactly did you study at university and why did you study that?
Okay, so my bachelor's degree in India was physics, chemistry, and mathematics. So, because that was the options, you either did physics, chemistry, mathematics, or you did chemistry, zoology, botany. Now, I did love biology. I still love gardening, and I loved dissecting stuff. Other than cockroaches, I think that was the only one I didn't like.
Oh, you had to dissect cockroaches?
Yes, I had to dissect cockroaches. So that was in year 11 and 12. And yeah, so of course, when I did my physics, chemistry, maths, the reason I did it was maths came easier to me. And then I remember people saying, oh, you just find it easy. And I thought, no, that's not correct, actually. From about, I think, for as far back as I can remember, I would do maths again, the problems again and again. So even in, when I did my master's years later, I would do every problem or every theorem, because mine was a pure maths master's degree, every theorem thrice. Once when the teacher was doing it, second time to practice, and third time before the exam. So, I found maths easy because I put a huge amount of effort doing it. It never felt like work because I kept doing it, and there were lots of hard bits, but I kept doing it.
Fantastic. So what you're saying is that even if you're not necessarily born with the mathematics skills, you can learn it through working hard at it, perseverance.
Yes. If you think of pianos or, the Matildas, they didn't get there by starting yesterday.
No,
You don't get anywhere by starting yesterday.
No, it takes lots of work and effort. Cool. And then after university, did you move to Australia? Is that correct?
No. So what happened is I got married, I had a kid, and then I did my master's 4 years later in mathematics. And while I was doing my PhD, that's when we moved to Australia. So I'd finished my PhD. I submitted my thesis in 2 years. as also say, it's amazing what the brain is capable of when you have a deadline. So the Australian immigration had given me a deadline, and to meet that deadline, I submitted my thesis in 2 years.
Wow, that sounds like a real fast tracked PhD. I wish I could do that.
Yeah, and what it has given me is insight on how to help my students. When people say it's difficult, and I always say it is amazing what the brain is capable of. So just trust yourself.
2 years. She did her PhD in 2 years. Most people take 3 years minimum. Many people take 4 or more years. She did it in just two. With a child. Damn. Now, Asha is a professor of mathematics at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, where she's doing some pretty important stuff.
So what I'm doing now is a lot of research in a number of areas, mathematics, and also basically the mathematics behind cybersecurity and anything else, the risk management of cybersecurity, how to make it safer for small and medium businesses, how to deal with the post-quantum world that we are going into, how to secure all those Internet of Things devices, how to improve gender in cybersecurity.
What sort of impacts does this have for us as a society in the future? Like, is it sort of working on stuff like AI or security, or what sort of things are we working towards?
Security to a great extent is what I work on. Little bits of AI come in because, when we are trying to secure things, we are getting so much of data. How do you tell that a signal that is coming is actually malware?
So, malware stands for malicious software, and it's basically a file or a code that can infect your technological devices and do a whole bunch of bad things. Things like viruses, spyware, Trojan horses, these are all types of malware that can do a lot of damage if we're not careful.
So that's where the AI, the machine learning comes in. How do we use machine learning to address security? Because one of the major problems we have, and as you would know, the spam. We get so much of spam. And one of the things that I have realized over the last few weeks itself is that we classify things as either phishing, which is where there is a link you click, which will then disturb your security, or as spam is. But much of the spam is actually a scam. And there is no software, no way that the spam is divided into scam and spam.
So, spam is essentially unsolicited communication, usually emails for erectile dysfunction, but they can also come through as text messages and phone calls, and they're usually just trying to get you to spend money. A scam is when someone is trying to steal your money or perhaps valuable information, which they then use against you to steal your money. But a spam scam is when they do both. They offer you something you want, you try to get it, and then they just screw you over big time. Spam scams. Be careful out there.
And that's when I realized this is the major problem. Australians lost $3 billion last year to scams.
3 billion? Just in Australia. Just last year. I'm not really what you would call a religious person, but Jesus.
One of the major things is the over 2022, there have been more money lost and more scams through the phone. Now, why is that? It's because there is a human at the other end. As opposed to when you get an SMS text, you can easily either block it, delete it, whatever. So I do remember getting a call. This was just after we had gone into lockdown. So I think June 2020, the person rang me and said, on my home phone, and said that there was a problem. There was malware in my laptop, and I needed to give them access. And I said no. I didn't engage. I didn't say why. I just said no. I'm not giving you access. The person got really angry with me, saying that I was not trying to protect my computer. I was not trying to protect the company data. And
I feel like they definitely called the wrong person. Like, of all the people they could have spoken to, you are like the expert in preventing this from happening.
But what it told me also was I realized why people fall for it. What would you do if you're not an expert? You don't understand how, for example, your company deals with these things, or you have not done it before, or you're just, somebody on your own laptop and the person starts scolding you. You started scolding me. And I said no, and I disconnected because I knew the procedures for RMIT.
So RMIT is the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, and they have their own online security system, which is why Asha knew that she was being scammed. Unfortunately, we all don't have our own online security team, so if somebody calls you up and asks for access to your computer, just hang up on them.
But how do you stop these people threatening our grandparents, our older uncles and aunts?
That is an excellent question, and that's what you're working on now. You're working on research and ways that we can prevent these scams from happening.
Absolutely. That is what I'm trying to think of and what I say. And the other thing is that these people do is they tell you not to tell anyone because they put it on some sort of this is very secret. They increase paranoia.
And I suppose that's a method of getting the scam to work for a bit longer as well. If people don't know about it, it's more likely to spread and work on more people in the long run. I have a theoretical scenario for you. Say there's a young couple in their late 20s or early 30s, and they've just had their first child. And they're posting photos and videos on Instagram, Facebook, online, everywhere, and not really thinking too much about any security access or anything like that. What are the potential ramifications or long-term issues that could arise from that sort of behavior?
How do I put it? My mind boggles when I see this. I see it on Twitter, I see it on Instagram. I see people taking a picture of the child's birth certificate, and I say, you have now set your child up for identity theft for the rest of your life. We have deep fakes. Has the child given you permission to do this?
Probably not.
That's right. So people are trusting you, and you shouldn't. As far as possible, keep your personal information personal. There is no need to share it with the rest of the world.
The birth certificate is an interesting one. I'm not sure why you would post that, but I understand the desire to want to share photos of loved ones with the world. I think the term is called sharenting. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I haven't. That's a new word. Thank you.
Sharenting, the practice of parents publicizing sensitive content about their children on internet platforms. Don't be a sharenter.
Don't be a sharenter.
The concern that we're facing now and in the future is the ability of AI to generate copies of people with a photo or two and with a small snippet of their voice.
We should all be careful of what we are sharing, what we are doing.
Absolutely. To bring it back to this theoretical scenario, though, it can happen with anybody. Like my mum, for example, bless her, posts photos of me online. And obviously I post photos of myself online anyway, and YouTube and everything. But I guess the idea is that with all that stuff out there, photos and videos, that can be used in bad ways if it's not kept secure. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. They can use because, that's how scams happen. Because it starts with one and then they're trying to build a profile. So that there is, and I look at it and I think there's way too many pictures of myself out there. Yes, but let's protect the younger generation. I don't know. If I had the choice, I'd probably not put anything online.
Certainly not birth certificates or any forms like that.
Yes, birth certificates. There was a passport photographs, which I think a lot of people wouldn't. But more importantly, boarding passes. Tony Abbott got caught with a boarding pass.
Wow, yeah, and he's a pretty important guy too, especially for identity theft.
That's right. And he just said, here's my boarding pass. I was like, okay, now I know your date of birth. I know when you're traveling. Yes, I know a whole bunch of stuff.
If you don't know, Tony Abbott was an Australian Prime Minister who was famous for eating an onion like an apple. Look it up, it's hilarious. But it turns out that he also got hacked because he posted a photo of a boarding pass on his Instagram. This guy was our Prime Minister. So, moral of the story is, don't be like Tony Abbott. Don't eat raw onions, and don't post pics of your plane tics. That rhymes. Sweet. I've got another theoretical scenario. Say you've got roughly 100 different accounts across various applications, Netflix, bank accounts, investing, whatever else, and you've got one password. Genius or insane?
Insane. Insane. I know people use password generators and stuff like that. What you need to remember are the passwords you use on a regular basis. The ones you don't, often you can just reset it.
You know that feeling when you go to log into something and it's been like 6 months since the last time and you just have no idea what the password was or even the criteria for the password? Like, is there capitals? Is there numbers? Is there special characters? And then what special characters do you use? Do you go for the classic exclamation mark, maybe the dollar symbol, or do you mix it up? Something like the percentage sign or a good old ampersand. Well, probably don't waste your time. Just reset the password. Doing this, I was recently able to log back into my MySpace account from the mid-2000s. Would not recommend going back to MySpace. It's haunting.
Just reset it. If you're going to use it once a year, I know everything. And one of the reasons I don't like to do online shopping is one is you have to create an account, and two, then they spam you and keep spamming you. You buy one vacuum cleaner, they spam you with every vacuum cleaner. How many vacuum cleaners does a person need? It's like,
I've already got one vacuum cleaner.
that's the one I wanted. I've got it. So leave me alone.
Absolutely. Is password hacking, is that common? Is having a super basic simple password dangerous?
Oh, that's very dangerous. It's very dangerous because it's very easy to crack. You don't have to be very ingenious to have a more difficult password. So, better still, two-factor authentication, and not with SMS, use an authenticator app.
So authenticator apps are becoming more popular now because they only work from your own device. So assuming that you haven't had your phone or laptop stolen in the last 10 minutes, you, and only you, will be able to use the authenticator app to prove that it is you trying to log in to your bank account, your dating app, or whatever the hell you're trying to log into.
This is always with you. It's never transmitted. Remember, when you get an SMS, it's being transmitted across maybe an open channel. But if it's an authenticator app, then you already have it and your phone has not left your hands.
Professor Asha Rao saving us from all of the spam and the scams out there.
Yes, trying to.
You've mentioned a couple of books that you've read. I wonder if you have any book recommendations for our listeners, anything to do with, say, cybersecurity or the modern state of where we're at. Any particular books jump out?
So there is Bruce Schneier's Secrets and Lies. It's a very old book. So maybe back sometime in 2004, 5, something like that. Quite old.
That's not that old.
I'm talking, remember the younger, those born in the 2000s, it's like, oh, that was before I was born. So I clarify these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bruce Schneier's Secrets and Lies is a really good book.
So Secrets and Lies by Bruce Schneier, spelt Schneir, was originally written in the year 2000, and it teaches you about security technologies, their capabilities, and their limitations. So if you're interested in cybersecurity, get this wherever you get books. Just be aware that the television series, also named Secrets and Lies, which follows Detective Andrea Cornell as she investigates a series of homicidal cases, great series, but totally unrelated to the book. Just FYI.
If you can stay awake, one of the first books I read was David Kahn's The Code Breakers, Kahn. That is from the 1960s, I think, or maybe even earlier. It talks about cryptography from the beginning. So it goes back to before Caesar. It talks about everything. And the best thing I liked about it, he talks about how the Enigma was broken and the Second World War.
All right, so this book is old. It's from 1967. And if you're from 1967, don't worry, you're beautiful. But this book talks about the history of cryptography from ancient Egypt up until 1967. Which includes the story of cracking the Enigma code during World War II, but that was also depicted really well in the movie Imitation Game. Definitely check that out if you haven't seen it, and if you have, watch it again. But anyway, we're talking about David Kahn's book, The Codebreakers.
Yes, so I tell my students, get that book. It's usually in the libraries, and read it at bedtime because it'll do two things. It'll increase your knowledge about cybersecurity, and it'll send you to sleep.
Right.
There is great advantages of reading books which send you to sleep. Two birds with one stone.
Okay, so I just had to cut a huge section of our conversation here because we just started talking about our favorite books, fiction versus non-fiction, paperback versus Kindle. Can you blame me? She's just such a pleasant human being. And she did suggest that we should all go to the library more. And if you've never been, check it out, because you can usually find just about any book you want to read and just borrow it and read it for free. Anyway, somehow our conversation got into embroidery, and, well, I'll let the professor finish that story.
That's right. Often I find I remember I do a lot of embroidery as well. So I used to live further away from the city, and around the train I would sit and embroider stuff. And I remember people would come up to me and say, "Oh, don't worry, you will finish it." And I'm like, "I'm not worried. For me, it's the journey." So I always feel sad when a book is finished because it's the journey. I prefer the journey of reading, not the ending. I mean, the ending is nice.
Yeah, sometimes. I love what you were saying before about enjoying the journey as well. I think that's a good metaphor for life as well. Some people are always waiting to, or just can't wait for the next big thing, but you got to enjoy every moment.
I know most of the time when I'm walking, I love walking. I am more often having earphones on, but most of the time I just like to look at people. And especially when I travel, I don't like to have my earphones in because I want to see people. And, one of the things I've realized, no matter where you go in the world, people are the same. I people watch. I, you know, people watched in the Greek islands. I've people watched in Canada. I love to go for a long walk, and it's not like I sit there and stare at people, but I'm just watching. And it's like, oh, this is very similar to the people in India and in Australia, in the US. Everybody's the same.
We're all doing the same stuff.
There may be different shapes and sizes, but other than that.
In the past few years, Professor Asha Rao has been named one of the superstars of STEM in Australia, and she was added to the Victorian Honour Roll of Women for her work inspiring younger generations to get involved in the fields of science, technology, engineering and maths. And she's trying to break down gender barriers and get more females involved in STEM. So I asked her to speak a bit about that.
Oh, absolutely. Women are half the population. We have some major challenges facing us. And so one of the things is there are so many girls are told that they are not good enough. And the crazy is research shows that girls are turned off from mathematics because their primary school teacher is turned off mathematics. It's really crazy. The primary school teacher feels uncomfortable and anxious, and so consequently that anxiety for some very strange reason is passed on to the female students, not the male. Whether the teacher is male or female doesn't make a difference. So what I'm trying to say is, basically what I try to tell people is that, and especially girls, I go out and talk to year 8s and 9s a lot, is that everything takes work. Never listen to anybody who says you're not good enough. If somebody says you're not good enough, don't believe them. How do they know? How do they know you're not good enough? Do they have access to your brain cells? That's the thing. And I was looking at something somebody put up yesterday, and they said, "Oh, I thank these people to giving me the chance." And I was like, "You are good enough. Don't ever think that somebody is giving you a chance. They're only giving you did good, girl."
Yeah, you go for it.
You go for it. And this is for the men as well. It's not just, a lot of people who are uncertain, girls more than men. So yeah, so that's what I try to do is, all the things I have learned, it's amazing what the brain is capable of. So let it take over and let it do its job.
Absolutely. And yeah, if you're interested in anything like learning more about science, technology, engineering, mathematics, anything like that, don't be deterred if you're not incredible at it.
Yeah, you don't have to be.
Persevere, just keep working at it, and you will improve. Inevitably, we'll all improve. Our brains, like you said, our brains are incredible.
That's right. And all of these, Pavarotti and everybody, they didn't get there without practice. Practice, and more practice. That's what we need.
Absolutely. Professor Asha Rao, I've got a few listener questions for you if you would like to answer those. But before that, every week here on Travelling Science, we make a donation to a charity of the guest's choosing. And this week, Asha has chosen to donate to the Australian Mathematical Sciences Institute, or AMSI, which focuses on advancing and strengthening all areas of mathematics education in Australia, helping more young people to get involved in the world of maths. So a donation has been made to AMSI on behalf of Professor Asha Rao. And if you'd like to make a donation to them as well, you certainly can. Or if you'd like to support this show and the charities that we contribute to every single week, you can certainly do that as well, and it will be truly appreciated. Either way, both those links are in the show notes just down below. And now, let's get back to Travelling Science. The first one here is from Anala Cooper. She wants to know, are we being spied on? Like the cameras in our laptops or the microphones in our phones. Is it possible for people to tap into those and actually spy on us? Is that happening, or is that just a big rumor?
No, it probably is happening. You need to be careful. Do you have, there could be spyware.
So spyware is a type of malware that installs itself on your computer and then tracks and monitors your online behavior without you even realizing it.
Is your computer protected, laptop protected? What I would be more worried about is your TV. Have you got a smart TV?
I do. I actually don't. I travel around a lot, hence the name Traveling Science, but I just decided to lie to her to keep the conversation rolling, you know?
Have you got a smart TV? Have you made sure that the default is not that it is on all the time?
I think it's off, but I'm not sure how off it is.
Yes, so that's the whole thing. Is I do remember a few years ago, Samsung was caught where everything was just being recorded.
Oh wow.
People having conversations. So, I think it was about quite a few years ago that you started getting these automatic devices which would switch off your TV completely at the plug. Now, that's probably a good idea. And especially if you have a fridge, your smart fridge. What is that doing? A smart microwave.
Do these kitchen appliances that have microphones, you can talk to them as well?
They have, yeah, because you can talk to them. You can, IoT, everybody's going into the IoT of things and Bluetooth.
Look, you probably already knew this, but embarrassingly, I didn't. So IoT stands for Internet of Things because so many things are hooked up to the internet nowadays. We all know about our laptops, our phones, smart TVs, but here are some smart things that are connected to the internet that you might not have known about. Smart fridges, smart microwaves, smart toasters, smart water bottles, smart light bulbs, smart cars, not the really small ones, actual internet cars. Smart irons, smart vacuums, smart clocks, smart shoes, smart teddy bears, smart picture frames, smart coffee machines, smart baths, smart toilets, smart toothbrushes, smart rubber duckies, even smart pot plants. These can all be connected to the internet, and most of them you can speak to, which means most of them could be listening. Right now, they could be listening to this, to you. Freaky.
Yep, the Internet of Things. Why do you need to talk to your fridge? Are we getting so? I suppose it's looking at the progression where we sat, we had to get up and we had to change the channel on the TV. Now we have a remote. Now we don't even want to use the remote. We want to use voice commands. We are being spied on. We are forget being spied on. We are handing out data by the spadeful.
True. You mean just based on everything we're doing online, like the sort of things we're searching for and information we're inputting into certain websites?
That's right. Voice commanding your TV.
But I feel like we have to do that almost. It's almost like an age we live in where if you don't do that, you can't have access to so much that so many people take for granted.
Yeah, so that's the thing is most things have security to a certain extent. IoT is less. That was one of the hot research topics because the problem with technology is that it goes much faster than we can react to it. So it used to be, you buy a laptop, don't ever buy the latest one. If you're buying electronics, don't buy the latest one. Buy one off because it's cheaper and it has been tested.
Right. Just to finish off on that question, is the idea that if someone was listening, like companies were recording down the information, the conversations, is it so they could advertise to you? Like you hear the story that someone was talking about flying to Italy and then they'll get offered flights to Italy on their phone 10 minutes later. Is that a coincidence?
No.
That could be happening.
No, it's not a coincidence. Yep, it is definitely happening. It's definitely happening.
Freaky.
It is freaky. It is very freaky. And I remember, most of the time what happens is if you have your email open, so talking of a laptop, you have your email open and then you do a search for flights to Italy. The browser, what do they call it? The cookies.
Cookies are bits of data from websites that get stored in your web browser so they can remember what you've been looking at, and then they can target specific content and advertisements to you in the future.
The cookies are saved, and then the cookies basically will talk to each other.
They remember.
And then Google, if you're doing your search on Google, Google then tells you, oh, you wanted flights. Here are some flights.
There you go. Alrighty, hope that answers your question, and Nala. B. Digsy is wondering, is it important to change passwords regularly for important applications like, say, your bank? Is it important to change passwords often, or is it better to just have one very good password that you keep the same?
It's good to change passwords, but at this point, definitely wherever you can, multi-factor, second factor authentication. Get the authenticator app. Almost every bank does authenticator apps or restricts what you can do. You can restrict what you can do yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. Second factor authentication. I'm sure a lot of people think that that's very annoying to put up with, but when you think about what you could potentially be protecting yourself from losing a lot of valuable information, potentially losing a lot of money, I'm happy to take a few extra seconds to authenticate when I'm trying to log into something like that.
Yeah, and also trying to minimize exposure of things like credit cards. So, using, say, for example, maybe PayPal or something like that, instead of putting your credit card into every single, online shopping. Use something else. So there is what I prefer to call is a single point of failure, because you can then attack it immediately. You know that is the place. And yeah, so the worry is not just that they're taking information. The worry is, are they protecting it?
Bizarre. I have another question from Pigeon Shepherd, and Apple V wanted to know, how safe are we, and what's the best way to protect yourself from getting hacked, say on social media?
So the one advice I give to most people is pause before you click.
Okay. Take a moment.
Take a moment. Often what happens is we are in a rush. It happens to me as well. But that's the whole thing. Take a moment and think, should I be clicking on this at all? If you are on social media, people then use social media. It's a very good use. I know from Twitter, I've learned a lot of recipes. So what do you then do? So you want to buy something, go into a browser and type the thing in. Don't link to a website through Facebook or Twitter. Don't buy. You can go, you can have a look, you can walk off, but do it through something else.
Or maybe you can just go buy it in a store elsewhere.
That would be, yes, that is what I prefer to do, is I prefer to see and look and feel.
Okay, so if at any point online you're concerned, just take a moment. If you're not sure about something, just take a moment and maybe think of another way that you can access the information you're looking for or the product you're looking for. Fantastic. Thank you so much for answering those listener questions. And just to finish off, I've got the lightning round.
Yes.
Roughly 6 questions, 60 seconds, and time starting now. You get an email from the Prince of Nigeria offering you money. Do you open it?
No, there's no such thing as free money.
Good, just testing you there. All right, a little more serious. If you could have done something completely different with your life, like say you never got into mathematics, for example, what do you think you might have done?
I wanted to do medicine. For years, I wanted to do medicine.
Awesome. Good answer. What do you love most about researching and teaching cybersecurity and mathematics? What do you love most about it?
With students, you will some student will turn up maybe a year, maybe, and I remember some student turning up to me, when we had masks in lockdown, and she came and said, "Do you remember me? You taught me, and yours was the only class I made a point of attending because you expected me to be there." That'll keep me going for another 4 years. And research, it's also, my it ideas marinate in my brain. It's this entire world in here. And research allows me to tap into that world.
Try and figure out some answers. What's your least favorite part about cybersecurity and mathematics? What do you hate about it?
What I don't like about teaching, I would say, is students. I just wish students would pay attention. But then they wouldn't be students, would they? I hate about it. I love every bit of it, even the bits that make me crazy.
True. Yeah, it can be tricky. If you had unlimited funding, where would you like to see that money spent?
Reducing homelessness.
Well, that's very honourable. Putting money towards homelessness. Fantastic. And last question, do you have a favourite mathematics principle?
Yes, it is. What I've realized is, the quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to whatever d or 0. That one, I have found that, the more research I do, there's big problems and they come down to the quadratic equation.
Always comes back to that equation.
I know, and students are like, I know, and I was like, that's all first year calculus. That's all it is.
Absolutely. Oh, Professor Asha Rao, thank you so much for being here today. You've done incredible things for the world of mathematics and cybersecurity, and also influencing and inspiring many people to get involved in STEM. So we thank you again for coming on the show today. And I'd just like to finish with one final question. If you had one last piece of advice for our listeners, perhaps something they could take home and act on to improve their lives in some way, what would your final bit of advice be?
It would be let ideas marinate in your brain. Don't have to solve things immediately. Just think about it, while you're on the toilet or cooking. Because the brain is amazing. It will come up with answers. And I know mine comes up with answers at 3 a.m. I wish it would stop doing that. But that's the, you really understand what is there, what is possible. What is possible? Just letting it marinate. Think of something and just idly think of things. Just let one idea just sit there and gnaw at it like a rodent, but in your brain.
So there you have it, legends. That was mathematician and cybersecurity sensation, Professor Asha Rao. And wasn't she just awesome? Like, so humble, yet so inspiring. And she kept reminding us that our brains are truly extraordinary. And if you think you might be interested in science or mathematics, engineering, something like that, but you're worried that you might not be smart enough, think again. With a bit of determination and perseverance, you can learn and improve at just about anything. Also, plenty of great technological advice, like get better passwords, or better yet, use a two-factor authentication system to prevent your password from getting hacked. Also, don't click on suspicious stuff online. Just take a moment and take a breath before you click that thing and end up filling your computer with viruses. Don't post photos of small children online, or if you do, make sure they're secure and can't be seen by complete random strangers. And definitely don't post photos of personal documents online. That's just asking for identity theft. Come on. Finally, if you have smart devices in your home, and most of us do, make sure you whisper so they can't hear you. Or make sure the security settings are appropriate, or that they're just switched off completely before you go sharing your secrets with the world. Anyway, it was a fun interview with a great guest, and I really hope you enjoyed listening to Professor Asha Rao. And if you did, you can follow her on Twitter at Asha Rao RMIT, and you can also find her on LinkedIn. And make sure you subscribe for more Travelling Science every single week, and follow Travelling Science on Instagram to see who we're interviewing next, and there you can also send in your own listener questions. Finally, if you're more visually oriented, feel free to check out the Travelling Scientist YouTube channel. And if you stick around to the end of the episodes, I always leave you with a little secret. And this week's secret is that I was once naked in the Himalayas. True story. I was actually hiking up there in 2016 with a couple of really good friends, and I lost a bet to my brother. And the deal was, if I lost this bet, I would go and get naked out in the mountains. And so there we were, nearly 5,000 meters above sea level, and I had to take off all my clothes in a space where no one could see me. But then I had to get my friend Charlie to come out and take a photo of my bare butt in the Himalayas as evidence. Unfortunately, about a week later, I actually got that camera stolen. So I never got to send that photo to my brother. So he doesn't believe that it happened. He doesn't believe that I was naked up in the mountains of Langtang National Park in Nepal. But it happened. It's in my memories. Charlie was there. He saw it. And I suppose randomly there's a Nepalese guy out there who's got a naked photo of me up in the hills. So good for him. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, legends. I'll catch you next Science Sunday. Cheers.